Okay, well, um, I'm talking to a friend a little bit on Facebook Messenger. We talk quite often, and this person is dealing with a situation. I'm not going to get into any details about it because it's their business, and it isn't for public consumption. And so this isn't about them specifically and their situation, but it does bring to mind a few things that I've observed over the years. I've been around a little while and I've seen a lot of stuff, and a lot of the stuff I've seen hasn't been good, unfortunately. I've buried a lot of friends. I've seen the insides of some places that I guarantee you, if you live the rest of your life and never see the inside of those places, you'll be you'll be far better off, trust me. And I've met some people who I would really advise anybody to stay away from, because some people are just predatory. That's all. They just have that right in them. But it got me to think in this conversation I'm having with this person. It's an ongoing conversation about some things that they're dealing with in their personal life and a situation specifically that they're dealing with. And it's a heartbreaking situation. It truly is. And but talking to these people, it kind of got me thinking. Talking to this person, it kind of got me thinking. Excuse me, pardon me. Um, the devil. I know a lot of people don't believe the devil exists. I've heard that. They say the greatest trick the devil ever played on us is to convince us he doesn't exist. But the devil, he lays traps for us. He does. I'm just watching here. There's a hornet trying to get into my drink. Yeah, get out of there, you. You can't have it. It's mine. There's a whole bunch of them in there that have residue in them that the hornet can feed off of. But oh no, he's got to get into the one I'm drinking because he's a greedy bastard. Anyway, greedy. Yeah. Anyway, though, getting back to what I was talking about, the devil does set many traps, and he baits them with things we think we want, with the things that we think we have, we think we need, we think we can't live without. We think if we don't have this, if we don't experience this or whatever, then life just isn't worth living, really. And so the devil baits traps with those things, and we voluntarily walk into them. We're like the raccoon that voluntarily walks into the live trap because we're after the can of cat food that's in there or the scrap of meat. And so we walk in there, and of course the door slams behind us. And, in the case of a raccoon, sometimes you're just going to be driven out to the middle of nowhere and released, because it's people doing the trapping. But and people can show mercy. Um, Satan's different, though. He sets traps and he has no mercy. He doesn't really understand that concept. Like you'd have to first explain to Satan what mercy is, and then you'd have to wait for him to stop laughing at you before he gave you any kind of an answer about that. But anyway, he does set traps for us, though, and just like the raccoon, we voluntarily walk in. There's nobody pushing us in or anything. We go of our own accord because we see something in there that we want. We see something shiny. We see something tasty. We see something that catches our eye in just the right way, and we want that. So we walk into the trap, and the door slams shut behind us. Now, the good thing for us, though, the good news for us, isn't that the guy who trapped us is merciful, because he is not. So that's not it. In a raccoon's case, a raccoon has to count on the mercy of the humans who trap him, and the intentions of the people who trap him. In our case, we know the one who traps us has no mercy and has no good intentions. But fortunately for us, the one who traps us isn't the ultimate authority. You see, even Satan has to answer to God. And God has the authority to order Satan to open the trap and let us go. And God will do that too, God will order Satan to do that. But we have free will. If you trap a raccoon or any other animal in a trap, I'll make this analogy. A little boy sets a trap and he captures an animal in it. Doesn't matter what kind of animal, he just captures some sort of an animal. And he's proud, he's caught this animal. He's proud of himself for doing that, And so he goes and he gets his dad, and he brings his dad over to show him what he's caught. And his dad sees this, and his dad says, "Open up that trap immediately, son, and let that animal out of there." And the boy has to obey his dad because his dad is the authority. His dad is the boss in that situation. And so the boy obeys. He opens up the trap. You and I both know that animal is going to run. They're going to come out of that trap like their tail's on fire, and they're going to run, and they're going to get as far away from that situation and those people as they can. That animal don't want anything to do with that situation. It wants out of there, and it will go out of there if you give it the opportunity. See, animals aren't stupid. People say stupid animal, dumb animal. But really, animals are smart enough to know that if the door is opened and they're granted a second chance at life, that they should take it. But here's the thing about people. People are more complex, and that often makes us not as smart as an animal. And we have pride, and we have shame, and so on. And so, we'll be too proud. God will tell Satan, open the door and let him out of there. And Satan will obey because he has to, not because he wants to. Satan, he doesn't want to do you any good at all. But if God orders him to, he has no choice. He will open the door. Despite himself, he will do as he's told. So God orders Satan to open the door. He opens the door. And what do? We stay in the trap because we're too proud to admit that we got trapped. Even though it's obvious, anybody can see we got trapped, but we're not going to admit that because we're proud. So we'll stay in the trap, or we'll stay in the trap because we're ashamed. And we figure, well, I was stupid enough to get trapped, so I deserve the consequences of getting trapped. I don't deserve the kindness that God has bestowed upon me by offering me to let me out of the trap, by giving me a second chance, And so they stay in the trap, and they perish there, you see. And I've seen a lot of people perish in traps over the years, I've come close a few times myself to perishing in traps, so I know what I'm talking about. It's something that we do as humans, we perish in a trap. And anyway, the situation I'm talking about, that I'm talking with this person about, is a situation involving a third party who's close to this person. And anyway, and beyond that, I'm not going to say anything else, but just suffice it to say that third party has fallen into a trap. And the door is open. They can come out of it anytime they wish to. But they're too proud and they're too ashamed to do so. And that's a terrible shame because it's causing a lot of heartache and heartbreak for the people who care about this person. And despite what this person thinks of themselves right now for having fallen into the trap, they are worthy. They are worthy, and they ought to come out of the trap. Really, there's no reason for them to stay in there and perish. And it would be a terrible loss if they did. That's the thing, it'd be a terrible loss if this person chose to do that. But in the end, see, here's the thing. God will order Satan to open the door. But we have free will. We don't have to leave the trap if we choose not to. God won't force us to leave the trap. He'll force Satan to open the door so we can leave. But whether we leave or not is up to us. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are so stuck in their mind. They're trapped in their mind, first of all. And when you're trapped in your mind, then there isn't even a requirement for a cage with a door that slams shut behind you, while you're nibbling on that piece of pork fat or whatever has been put in there to trap you. There's no need for that, because it's in your mind. The trap is within, and there's a lot of people carrying around a lot of demons, and these things are in their mind, and they're trapped. And these things are constantly whispering in their ear, telling them that they're not good enough. You're not good enough. You don't deserve any better than this. Why don't you just go ahead and feed the addiction, whatever it happens to be? You'll feel better. You'll feel better, at least for a while. You'll feel better. And it's the best thing to do, really, is just to feed the addiction. And this voice is whispering in their ear constantly. And then when the people try to help this person, then the demon whispers, because to the demon, that's a threat. Somebody trying to help this person is a threat. The demon wants to keep this person in that trap. He doesn't want to let the person go. And so the demon whispers in their ear, oh, don't listen to her. She's just a nag. She's just stupid. She doesn't understand. She's not really your friend. She doesn't care for you. Just go ahead and feed the addiction. You'll feel better. Just go ahead and do that. Really, you and I both know you're not worth any more than that. She knows it too. But she's lying to you. She's telling you you're worth more than that, but she's telling you lies. I'm telling you the truth. And you know I am. Feed the addiction, you'll feel better. This is what happens. And unfortunately, when a person falls into that trap, it starts out innocently enough, just like a raccoon walks into the trap because, the raccoon sees that there's a nice scrap of meat in there or whatever, and a can of cat food or whatever's been put in there, and the raccoon wants that. Raccoons have a big appetite, and they want what they want. So they see it in there. Oh, that's a room with a piece of meat in it. I'll go in there and get the meat. And they don't understand how the mechanism works until it's too late. Slam, down comes the door. Now you're stuck. What do? You can't get out. The door only operates one way for you. The people who own the trap know how to open it and can open it from the outside, but you can't do anything. You're stuck in there. And you see, it starts out as a simple thing. I'm going to satisfy my appetite. In the raccoon's case, it's an appetite for food. It's a craving, People have different cravings. People crave all sorts of things. And the thing is, the devil, when he sets the trap, he'll put whatever craving is first and foremost in your mind into the trap. And that could be any number of things that people crave. And we all know people have appetites, people have cravings. People want this, people want that. And it's put right there in front of you. The devil tried that on Jesus. He put all the kingdoms of the world in front of him. He said, this can all be yours. Just get down on your knees and worship me. Because, the devil craves to be worshipped. That's why the devil tried to take over heaven. Because he wanted to be like God. He wanted to take God's place. He said, I will sit on the throne. I will be worshipped. That's what led to all the trouble, is the devil having this craving of being worshipped. So the devil, he laid the trap in front of Jesus, but Jesus wasn't stupid. And Jesus basically said, I don't want any of that. Go away. And he ordered the devil to leave him, and the devil did, because the devil had to. because it was Jesus. You know, if Jesus tells you to do something, you do it, even if you are the devil. And so the devil had to leave. But he tried to lay a trap for Jesus. He said, look, all this, isn't this spectacular? All this can be yours. Anyway, Jesus said, it's junk. Take it away. I don't want it. Take your junk and leave, you know. Take your oil-burning 1962 Studebaker Lark and leave. I don't want it. That's pretty much what he said, you know. And the devil left. For anybody who doesn't know, a Studebaker Lark is a car, old car. Anyway, not a very good car either. Even in their day, they weren't a very good car, but a car just the same. Anyway, that's basically what Jesus did. He told the devil to take his crap and leave, and he didn't walk into the trap. But you know, people, we tend to walk into these traps, and even when the door is open for us, and even when there's all kinds of good things waiting for us outside of that trap, we'll tend to stay in that trap because there's just like a self-destructive tendency that we have within us, you know. And, you know, you get a person who grew up being told they didn't matter, being told they were no good, being neglected, and all the rest of it. And then they become an adult who feels like they don't matter and like they're no good and like they should be neglected. Why wouldn't I be neglected? I'm no good after all. And so they can have all kinds of wonderful things in front of them. You know, they can have a feast laid out on a banquet table for them. And again, there's a biblical analogy there because the Bible says that a feast will be laid before you in the presence of your enemies, you know. But the thing is, you can have that all laid out in front of you, and you'll still go into that trap to retrieve that little scrap of rancid pork or whatever it is, or, you know, or stinking cat food or whatever, you know, that was put in there to entice you. We do this because we're sometimes not very bright, I suppose, and because we're damaged. We're damaged spiritually, and so that affects our actions. It affects what we do. Ultimately, though, the decision to come out of the trap and live or to stay in the trap and perish is ours. And there's nobody can make it for us, you know. And it is a shame to see people, you know, suffering and grieving. And because a person doesn't have the good sense to come out of the trap when the door has been opened for them. Anyway, sometimes we don't, though. There's a lot of people perishing in a lot of traps all over the world as we speak. It's happening every day. People lose their lives. They lose everything they've got, and just for garbage, just so they can continue doing something that it will never work for them, so they can continue being under the influence and influence of and around people who don't care for them, you know, and they consider the people who do care for them annoyances. Why are you nagging me? Why are you always after me about this? Why can't you just let me do what I need to do? You know, they don't understand. They don't understand that there's a foundation there being laid, a foundation of love by that other person. And that person only wants the best for them. But they can't understand that because the addiction blinds them. See, the demon that's living within them blinds them, and they can't understand it. They can't see it. Why would anybody care that much about me? This must be a trap, you know. Little do they know they've already fallen into a trap. This is the rope being fed down to them to pull them up out of it. But they don't see it that way. They see this as a rope to hang me with. This isn't a rope to pull me out of a trap. This is a rope to put around my neck and hang me. That's the way they see it. They can't understand it. And the demon of addiction will do that. It'll blind a person to reality. And the reality that that person then thinks is reality isn't anywhere near to reality. It's a total fiction. But they can't see it. So they're in a trap. They don't even realize they're in a trap. Or if they do realize it, they don't have any desire to leave it because they think this ain't so bad. Or they think, well, I deserve this or whatever. And then a person throws them a rope to pull them up out of the trap. And what do? They toss the rope back up at the person and say, don't be sending that down here. I didn't ask for that. This is what they do. And, you just want to hang me with that rope. That's all you want, and all the rest of it. And, so like I say, the foundation can be laid. But it's up to the carpenter whether he'll build a house on it or not. And if he chooses not to, you can't make him. And in the case of a situation with somebody who's suffering from addiction, you can lay the foundation. You can lay a really good foundation, something that's really worthy of being built on. But in the end, they'll decide whether they build on it or not. And a lot of the time, they'll decide not to. And you just end up with a hole in the ground, Maybe a nice hole in the ground, but it's still a hole in the ground. It's really not very good for anything. Anyway, it's an awful waste, that's all. It's an awful waste to see people going through that and subjecting others to it as well. And, I don't know. It just seems like an awful waste is all. But we are living in a fallen world, and these things will happen. The story of the prodigal son from the Bible comes to mind. Now, he at least had the good sense to go home. He realized the world had whipped him, and he didn't want any more of that, so he went home. He humbled himself. He went with his hat in his hand to his father's gate, and he asked for forgiveness and to be allowed in, and his father was overjoyed. His father said, never mind about all that, come in, I'm so glad you're home. And he ordered his servants to kill the fatted calf. We're having a celebration, son. My son is home. We're having a celebration. And see, that's how God is. That's what God wants us to do. He wants to kill the fatted calf and have a party, He doesn't want to remind us of our shortcomings. He's just happy we're home. Never mind what you did out there. It doesn't matter anymore. Come in and sit with your dad, Have a plate of food here, and come sit with me. That's all I ask. That's a beautiful thing, and that is the love of God in a nutshell. But in the end, we have free will, and we choose to accept it or not. Now, as long as a person's on this side of the sod, there's always hope. And, we can't completely give up on another person. Even if we disassociate from them in certain ways, even if we have to for our own sanity. I've been in situations where I've had to disassociate with people because I just couldn't deal with them. But that doesn't mean that I wish bad things upon them. It doesn't mean that I hate them. It doesn't mean I wish bad things upon them. It's just that I can't deal with that person, and I recognize it, and so I disassociate. But I still always have the hope that that person will get better, and, that it won't end badly for them, basically. And you can have both. You can come to terms with the fact that this is a person you can't deal with anymore, at least not in the capacity you have been dealing with them, at least not unless or until there are major changes. But you can still care for that person. You can still hope if they get better, and that things work out for them, regardless of what their relationship to you ends up being. Maybe it'll end up being a good relationship and the kind of relationship you had before, only better, because it won't be, you don't have this third party of addiction in there. Or maybe that's not how the relationship will be. Maybe that ship has sailed, but you can still have a good relationship to the other person. But it's just that you can't always deal with a person as they are. That's all. Anyway, that's it. I'm up to 25 minutes now, nearly 26, so I'm going to stop. The phone's going to make me stop soon anyway, I'm sure, because I'm out of, I'll be out of memory very soon. So we'll leave it at that, and I guess we'll see y'all later. Bye for now.